Welcome to PHT Eternal Mysteries, the place where we uncover the greatest secrets and the epic stories that have shaped our world. Today we journey back in time to witness the glory, the struggles, and the turning points of human history. Prepare yourself, for this adventure will reveal truths hidden for centuries. Reenacting the history of the British Empire. 1497 to 1945, the most powerful empire in history. The empire on which the sun never sets. A phrase used to describe empires whose territories stretched so vast and whose influence reached so far that at any given moment, the sun was always shining on some part of their dominion. In the flow of world history, no nation embodies this phrase more than Britain. At its golden age, Britain was hailed as the largest empire in human history, spanning across all 5 continents, ensuring that the sun would never set on its realm. Join today's episode of History Map as we uncover the remarkable journey of Britain's rise into one of the greatest empires the world has ever seen. The foundations of the British Empire began to take shape when England and Scotland were still 2 separate kingdoms. The 100 Years' War, fought between 1337 and 1453 against France, combined with the devastating outbreak of the Black Death, ravaged England from the late 14th to the mid-15th century. Political deceit and social unrest, compounded by the weak rule of King Henry VI, plunged the nation into a series of bloody civil wars for the English throne between 2 rival branches of the Plantagenet dynasty, the House of York and the House of Lancaster, from 1455 to 1485. These brutal conflicts, remembered as the Wars of the Roses, ultimately ended with the rise of a new royal dynasty, the Tudors. Following his decisive victory at the Battle of Bosworth in August 1485, Henry Tudor ascended the throne as King Henry VII, ushering in a new chapter in England's history. Upon taking power, Henry VII built his own standing army and suppressed any rebellious nobles. Inspired by the maritime triumphs of Spain and Portugal, he granted John Cabot a royal commission in 1496 to lead an expedition to Asia via the North Atlantic. By this time, England had emerged as one of the key powers in Europe. In 1509, Henry VIII succeeded to the throne, famously breaking with the Roman Catholic Church in 1534, and establishing the Church of England through the Act of Supremacy. This bold move not only freed England from the influence of the papacy, but also planted the seeds for a powerful British Empire in the years to come. Henry VIII also rebuilt England's navy and strengthened control over Ireland by settling Protestant English and Scottish colonists there, while enforcing a series of acts between 1535 and 1542 to consolidate power. He envisioned expanding overseas, laying out plans for establishing colonies to boost trade and influence. In 1558, Queen Elizabeth had ascended the throne, restoring Protestantism after the Catholic reign of Queen Mary I. Elizabeth granted licenses for numerous oceanic expeditions aiming to expand England's territories abroad. At this time, the Protestant Reformation had turned England and Catholic Spain into bitter enemies. In 1562, Queen Elizabeth I encouraged privateer captains such as John Hawkins and Francis Drake to carry out slave-raiding attacks against Spanish and Portuguese ships off the coast of West Africa, aiming to break into the transatlantic slave trade. However, their efforts were repelled by the Spanish. In 1578, Elizabeth granted a royal patent to Humphrey Gilbert to undertake voyages of exploration and overseas expeditions. In 1583, during one such expedition, Gilbert reached the island of Newfoundland and claimed its harbor for England, although he left no settlers behind. By 1584, Walter Raleigh, with the Queen's permission, established a colony on Roanoke Island, off the coast of present-day North Carolina. However, due to a lack of supplies, the settlement failed. In 1588, King Philip II of Spain assembled an enormous armada, combining it with the elite forces of the Duke of Parma in the Netherlands, with the goal of invading England via the southeast coast. The Spanish fleet advanced to Calais and Boulogne, preparing for a landing. To avert this threat, the English deployed fire ships loaded with burning pitch and gunpowder to create chaos among the anchored enemy fleet. The Spanish, caught off guard, were forced to cut their anchors and retreat. This disastrous defeat shattered the might of the Spanish Armada and forced Spain to abandon any plans of invading England. The English East India Company was founded in 1600 to compete with the Dutch and the French in the East. The reign of Elizabeth I thus came to be regarded as one of the most glorious in England's history, a period of extraordinary progress in all fields, securing for the Foggy Isle the leading position in Europe at the time. In 1603, King James VI of Scotland inherited the English throne, uniting the crowns of England and Scotland. A year later, he negotiated the Treaty of London with Spain, ending decades of hostilities. Determined to consolidate power, James deliberately disregarded the traditional role of Parliament in England. This, however, pushed the nation toward the brink of civil war. When Charles I ascended the throne in 1625, he quickly entered into fierce conflict with Parliament. His authoritarian actions drew strong opposition, and he eventually dissolved it entirely. Due to deep divisions over political, religious, and social issues, the English Civil War erupted between supporters of Parliament and loyalists to King Charles I. This conflict was part of a broader series of intertwined wars from 1639 to 1653, spanning the kingdoms of England, Ireland, and Scotland. During this period, England's colonization efforts in North America and the smaller islands of the Caribbean, begun in the early 17th century, achieved notable results. The first permanent English settlement in the Americas was established at Jamestown in 1607, under the management of the Virginia Company. England soon after seized and claimed Bermuda. The Virginia Company's charter was revoked in 1624, and the colony came under direct royal control. Following this, Virginia became a crown colony. Successful settlements were also established at St. Kitts in 1624, Barbados in 1627, and Nevis in 1628. Maryland was founded in 1634 as a haven for Roman Catholics, followed by Rhode Island in 1636 and Connecticut in 1639. By 1649, Charles I was captured and put on trial for attempting to restore the old autocratic system. England was declared a republic under the leadership of Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell. However, in 1653, Cromwell's ambitious army staged a coup, expelling the members of Parliament and dissolving it entirely. Cromwell's military dictatorship replaced the short-lived republic, ensuring that the growing profits from maritime trade remained firmly in English hands. In 1651, Parliament issued the Navigation Act, decreeing that only English ships could trade with English colonies. In 1655, England seized the island of Jamaica from Spain. Tensions with the Dutch over colonial dominance led to a series of Anglo-Dutch wars. This rivalry only temporarily ended when King James II was deposed in 1688 by the English parliamentary forces and the Dutch Expeditionary Army led by William of Orange. Peace between England and the Netherlands allowed the two nations to enter the 9 Years' War as allies. Yet, European power struggles gradually positioned England as a stronger colonial power than the Dutch. In 1701, Portugal, England, and the Netherlands sided with the Holy Roman Empire against Spain and France in the War of the Spanish Succession, which lasted until 1714. The British Empire gained several territories during this time, including Newfoundland and Acadia from France, and Gibraltar and Minorca from Spain. Gibraltar became a vital naval base, granting Britain control over the entrance to the Mediterranean. The 7 Years' War, fought from 1756 among Europe's great powers, ended in 1763 with a decisive victory for the Anglo-Prussian alliance. The signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1763 brought major consequences for Britain's future. In North America, France recognized Britain's claim to Rupert's Land and ceded New France. Spain ceded Florida to Britain. Combined with victories over the French in India, The 7 Years' War established Britain as the world's preeminent naval power. However, in the 1760s and 1770s, tensions with the 13 colonies grew increasingly severe. To reassert direct control, Britain sent troops, sparking the American Revolutionary War in 1775. In 1776, the United States declared independence. Following a decisive defeat at Yorktown in 1781, Britain entered peace negotiations and in 1783 formally recognized American independence. In 1770, James Cook charted the eastern coast of Australia during a Pacific voyage, claiming the continent for Britain and naming it New South Wales. On the same voyage, he reached New Zealand and likewise claimed it for the Crown. Meanwhile, the Industrial Revolution was rapidly transforming Britain, marking a turning point in production. Groundbreaking inventions, the spinning jenny, the power loom, the steam engine, dramatically increased productivity. Coal-fired steam power illuminated the night sky and fueled Britain's growing industries. However, in the early 19th century, Britain faced a new threat of invasion from Napoleonic France. The Royal Navy blockaded French ports and won a decisive victory over the combined French and Spanish fleets at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. Between 1810 and 1815, the Duke of Wellington's victory at the Battle of Waterloo ended Napoleon's ambitions to invade Britain. Under the terms of the post-war treaties, France ceded Malta, Mauritius, St. Lucia, and Tobago. Spain ceded Trinidad, and the Netherlands ceded Guyana, along with other colonies to Britain. The British East India Company continued to expand the empire's presence in Asia. Its forces joined the Royal Navy to seize Java from the Dutch in 1811, acquire Singapore in 1819, and take control of Malacca in 1824, followed by the conquest of Burma in 1826. Throughout the 19th century, the British and Russian empires, both seeking to extend their influence in Asia, competed fiercely to fill power vacuums stretching from the Ottoman Empire to the Qajar dynasty in Persia and the Qing dynasty in China. Fearing Russian dominance in the Mediterranean and the Middle East, Britain and France invaded the Crimean Peninsula to cripple Russia's naval power. The struggle for influence in Asia remained unresolved for decades. In 1876, Britain annexed Balochistan, while Russia absorbed Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan. In 1878, the Ottoman Empire ceded the island of Cyprus to Britain in exchange for military aid should Russia attack. In 1883, Britain occupied Egypt to safeguard the Suez Canal and secure the vital route to India. Following an uprising in southern Egypt led by the religious leader Mahdi, Britain advanced into Sudan, completing its conquest in 1898. Under Queen Victoria, who reigned from 1837 to 1901, the British Empire extended its reach deep into the Americas, into China, and across the Caribbean, Africa, Asia, Australia, and the Pacific, all ruled from London under the British Crown. Strategic ports such as Gibraltar, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Aden were firmly under British control. Key trade routes, from the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa to India via the Suez Canal, and to spice and rubber plantations in Southeast Asia, were dominated by Britain. By the early 20th century, Britain possessed an unrivaled navy and commanded a vast colonial network, including Canada, Australia, much of Africa, the Caribbean, and the Far East. The saying, "the sun never sets" on the British Empire seemed almost mythical, yet it perfectly described the boundless reach of Britain's territories at the time. However, the rise of rival powers with imperial ambitions drew Britain into the maelstrom of the First and Second World Wars. The First World War brought victory, but at an unimaginable cost: a shattered economy, empty coffers, and cities scarred by destruction. In 1919, Ireland declared independence in Dublin, and the Irish Republican Army began a guerrilla war against British rule. The Anglo-Irish War ended in 1921 in a stalemate, leading to the Anglo-Irish Treaty, which created the Irish Free State, a self-governing dominion within the British Empire, independent in practice, but still linked constitutionally to the British monarchy. Still recovering from the Great War, Britain entered the Second World War. But the empire's former strength had faded. Britain suffered repeated defeats early in the conflict. With the intervention of the United States, however, the Allies, including Britain, ultimately triumphed over the Axis powers. In reality, Britain had lost nearly all of its Southeast Asian territories to Japanese forces during the war. After 1945, the empire entered a period of decline as independence movements surged across the globe. In 1947, Britain granted independence to India, its wealthiest colony. One by one, other colonies followed suit, marking the end of the once mighty British Empire. Today, though the sun no longer shines eternally over its lands, the English language and British culture continue to spread across the world. The United Kingdom remains one of Western Europe's leading economies and retains significant influence in global affairs across many fields. History is not just a collection of dates and events, but the legacy of the people and empires that once walked the earth. Today's story on PHT Eternal Mysteries is just one piece of the vast puzzle of our past. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so you won't miss the next chapter in our quest to explore the eternal mysteries of the world. See you in the next episode.